What if the most loving thing a parent does for their children, giving them money, is actually the most damaging? Chapter 5 of The Millionaire Next Door introduces one of the most controversial ideas in the finance world. Stanley and Danko calls it economic outpatient care. It is the practice of wealthy parents giving substantial financial gifts to their adult children, and their research shows it almost always backfires. The more money parents give, the less wealth their children accumulate. The more they help, the more dependent their kids become. This chapter will make some of you uncomfortable. It might even make you angry. But the data doesn't lie. Let's get into it. Stanley and Danko define economic outpatient care, or EOC, as substantial financial gifts that adult children receive from their parents on a regular basis. Not a one-time wedding gift, not helping with a genuine emergency. We're talking about ongoing, predictable cash payment that become part of the child's expected income, and the research findings are devastating. Finding 1. Adult children who receive regular financial gifts accumulate significantly less wealth than those who don't. This was consistent across every income level, every profession, and every demographic. More gifts equaled less wealth, every time. Why? Because the gifts create a consumption lifestyle the child can't sustain on their own. If your parents give you $30,000 a year, you don't save $30,000. You spend $30,000 more than you otherwise would. Your lifestyle inflates to include the gift. And once your lifestyle inflates, it almost never deflates. Finding 2. Gift receivers are more dependent on credit. Stanley found that adult children who received regular EOC were actually more likely to carry consumer debt than those who received nothing. The gifts didn't reduce debt. They enabled higher spending, which required even more borrowing to maintain. Finding 3. EOC weakens the motivation to earn. When you know money is coming from your parents, the urgency to build your own income diminishes. You take fewer risks. You stay in comfortable but low-paying jobs. You don't start that business. You don't push for that promotion. Finding 4. Gift-giving parents often can't afford it. Many parents who provide EOC are undermining their own retirement security. They're giving away money they'll eventually need, creating a future crisis for themselves while creating dependency in their children. Stanley breaks down how EOC typically works in practice. It starts small, like helping with a car payment, covering a phone bill. Then it escalates like a down payment on a house, private school tuition for the grandchildren, paying off credit card debt. Each gift feels justified in the moment. But the cumulative effect is a child who has never learned to fund their own life. The paradox is painful. Parents give because they love their children. But the giving teaches children that they don't need to be financially self-sufficient. Love creates dependency. Generosity creates weakness. The road to financial helplessness is paved with parental good intentions. Let's look at our first story. Stanley profiles 2 siblings who perfectly illustrate the EOC effect. Let's call them Alice and Beth. Alice is the older sister. She struggled early in her career, but her parents made a deliberate decision not to help her financially. They told her, "We love you, but you need to figure this out yourself." Alice resented it at the time. She drove a cheap car. She lived in a small apartment. She ate rice and beans more times than she'd like to remember. But Alice learned something priceless: how to survive on her own income. She budgeted out of necessity. She negotiated raises aggressively because she had to. She started a side business, and by her early 40s, Alice was with a net worth well into 7 figures. Beth is the younger sister. Their parents felt guilty about how hard Alice had it, so they decided to help Beth. They paid for her apartment after college. They bought her a nice car. They supplemented her income every month. They paid for vacations. They put a down payment on her house. Beth never struggled. She also never learned. She never budgeted because there was no need. She never negotiated raises because her lifestyle was subsidized. She never started a business, and by her early 40s, Beth earned a similar income to Alice, but had a net worth less than 1/5 of her sister's. And here's the cruelest part. When their parents eventually passed away and the gifts stopped, Beth's lifestyle collapsed. She had no savings, no investment portfolio, and no financial skills. She was in her 40s, earning a decent salary, and essentially starting from zero because she'd never actually been financially independent. Stanley saw this pattern repeated in family after family. The children who received the most were invariably the weakest. The children who received the least were invariably the strongest. Stanley's Economic Outpatient Care research has become alarmingly relevant in the 2020s. A 2024 survey by Savings.com found that 45% of American parents with adult children were still providing them with financial support, and the average annual amount had risen to over $16,000 per year per child. For parents with children aged 25 to 34, the number was even higher. But the most striking data comes from the housing market. A 2023 report by the National Association of Realtors found that 38% of first-time homebuyers in America received a cash gift from family to fund their down payment. In expensive markets like New York, San Francisco, and London, that number was even higher, approaching 50%. On one hand, this seems necessary. Housing prices have outpaced wage growth for decades. Young people genuinely can't afford homes the way their parents could. But Stanley would argue, and the data supports him, that these gifts come with hidden costs. A 2023 study by researchers at the University of Arizona found that young adults who received significant parental financial support reported lower financial self-efficacy, meaning they were less confident in their own ability to manage money. The most dramatic example of this pattern is playing out in South Korea. The country has a deeply ingrained culture of parental financial support. Parents routinely fund their children's education, housing, weddings, and even business ventures. By 2024, surveys showed that over 60% of South Korean adults in their 30s had received major financial assistance from parents. The result? South Korea has one of the lowest household savings rates among developed nations for the under 40 demographic, and parental retirement poverty has become a national crisis. Parents spent so much on their children that they left nothing for themselves. The children, raised on EOC, haven't accumulated enough to support their aging parents. It's economic outpatient care at a national scale, and it's producing exactly the outcomes Stanley predicted decades ago. This chapter cuts to the heart of a question every parent faces. What does it actually mean to help your children? Stanley's research reveals a fundamental confusion between comfort and competence. Parents who provide EOC are optimizing for their child's comfort. But comfort and competence are not the same thing. In fact, they're often opposites. Competence is the ability to earn, save, invest, and manage money, and it is built through struggle. You learn to budget when you have to. You learn to earn more when you need to. You develop financial resilience by surviving financial stress. Remove the stress, and you remove the learning. This mirrors research in psychology about what's called desirable difficulty. The idea that challenges which feel hard in the moment actually produce the strongest long-term learning. Easy experiences feel good but teach nothing. Hard experiences feel bad but build capability. Stanley found that the wealthiest, most financially successful adults in his study almost universally described a period of financial struggle early in their lives as the most formative experience they ever had. It taught them discipline, resourcefulness, and the value of a dollar in a way that no gift or lesson ever could. There's also a deeper philosophical point here about the difference between giving resources and giving values. Stanley found that the most effective wealthy parents didn't give their children money, but they gave them financial education. They taught them to budget. They explained investing. They modeled frugality. They discussed business decisions at the dinner table. These parents understood something crucial, that money given is money consumed. Values given are wealth created. The first depletes, the second compounds. Stanley's sharpest insight is this: if you want to truly help your children financially, make yourself the example, not the ATM. Show them how you built wealth. Teach them the principles. Then step back and let them do it themselves. The struggle isn't the enemy of their success. It's the prerequisite. This is the chapter that starts arguments at dinner tables, and I think that's the point. Every parent wants to make their child's life easier. It's the most natural instinct in the world. But Stanley forces you to ask, easier for now or easier forever? Because those are very different things. What moved me most in this chapter is the data on the children who received nothing. They didn't resent their parents. In interview after interview, they expressed gratitude, not for the money they didn't receive, but for the independence they were forced to develop. They said things like, "The best thing my parents ever did for me was not help me." That takes courage from a parent. Watching your child struggle when you have the means to help and choosing not to, that's harder than writing a check. But Stanley shows that it's the most valuable gift you'll ever give. If you're a parent, this chapter isn't asking you to be cruel. It's asking you to be strategic. Help with education, help with values, help with advice. But think very carefully before you help with cash, because every dollar you give might be taking a dollar of capability away. There are 3 takeaways from this chapter. First, if you're a parent, give education, not money. Pay for courses on investing, budgeting, or financial planning. Gift books about money. Fund experiences that build skills. But resist the urge to subsidize your adult child's lifestyle. Every dollar of subsidy is a dollar of independence they'll never develop. Second, if you're receiving financial help from your parents, set a deadline to stop. Talk to your parents honestly. Agree on a date. When the support ends, then spend that time building the skills and income you'll need to replace it. The deadline creates the urgency that gifts remove. Third, teach children about money starting young. Stanley found that PAW families talked about money openly. They gave children allowances tied to chores, not free money, earned money. They let children make spending mistakes with small amounts, so they'd learn before the stakes got high. Financial education is the gift that compounds. Cash is the gift that evaporates. Chapter 5 delivers the hardest truth, that love and money are a dangerous combination. The most generous parents often raise the least capable children, and the parents who hold back raise children who can stand on their own. In the next video, we'll cover Chapter 6, where Stanley and Danko explore the flip side, how wealthy families raise children who do become financially independent. What are the rules, the conversations, and the boundaries that produce the next generation of wealth builders? If this chapter hit home for you, as a parent or as a child, hit subscribe and share this with your family. This might be the most important money conversation you ever have. See you in the next one.